The Confidence Code by Shipman and Katty K. Okay folks, I'll be the first to admit, and probably the only one who feels the need to, that before getting this book I thought it would just be about confidence itself, nothing about like a certain sex and how their lives might involve it regarding self-assurance or anything like that. I mean, like, after finding out it isn't what I thought, I then thought, you know what? This is not the first book I'm reviewing whose readers are probably well over 95% women. So checking it out anyway can't be a crime on my part, but whatever perspective I can put on it that helps people figure out whether they want to buy it, or if they just want some general info on it, let's see what we can do. By the way, any generalizations on my part, I will try to emphasize here that they are on the author's part, generally. And to my understanding, in the beginning of the book, the authors basically said that although these generalizations are generalizations, the topic at hand warrants them. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the book, the chapters, things I liked, things I wasn't maybe so crazy about, things I learned, things that surprised me. I'm also going to go over some standout quotes who I recommend this book to, as well as what books to maybe check out next. It may sound like a lot, but we always get through it. And just a little overview of what you'll see in the description. There are affiliate links in it, and if you buy anything through them, then like this book, then I get commission, which helps me build this channel and keep making these videos. You can also find this book and many others on my Amazon storefront, and any books that I mentioned in this video, chances are I've also reviewed them, and I'll drop links to those reviews in the description too. So affiliate links, Amazon storefront, and other reviews. But welcome back to my channel. My name is Sam, and I want to make self-growth normal, because people shouldn't have to look this information up. It should just be mainstream knowledge. If you agree, then please make sure to smash that like button. So for starters, the introduction was fantastically written, discussing how women have come so far, and yet there's so much to be done, specifically in the professional and political worlds. They mentioned a few stories of like realizations that in women that they interviewed, and they interviewed women of confidence and lacking confidence. I suppose just to help us distinguish the two. But what they learned about confidence ended up being nothing like what they thought, and they figured out that success and getting ahead has more to do with confidence than competence. Confidence does happen to be genetic, and male and female brains, controversially of course, they work differently regarding self-assurance. But the good news with self-development being very democratic in so many areas, which makes me a very happy person, is that confidence can be learned. So chapter 1 is it's not enough to be good. You also learn about the difference between confidence and expectation. In studies with business school students, a Carnegie Mellon professor concluded that men initiate salary negotiations 4 times as often as women do, and when women do negotiate, they ask for 30% less. The problem stems from a lack of confidence and expectation. This really kind of makes you think, though, that this whole thing with confidence has more to do with what work is left to be done than we were led to believe. So are the authors correlating a woman's lack of confidence with being more realistic about their abilities? I don't get it. It must have flown over my head, but they said women are underselling. They did say that. Would you rather undersell or oversell? It's just not enough to be good, I suppose. Do men doubt themselves sometimes? Of course, but they don't examine those doubts in excruciating detail, and they certainly don't let those doubts stop them as often as women do. If anything, men tilt toward overconfidence. We were surprised to learn that most of them arrive at that state honestly. They aren't trying to fool anyone. Chapter 2 is do more, think less. It sounds like much of the first half of this chapter was a balancing act between acting and knowing the consequences of it. They talk about self-esteem, self-compassion, and optimism versus pessimism. I have to say, from rats to monkeys and neurology studies, I'll admit some of this book, I found it a little tricky to follow, and I'll say that about any book. Once you start talking about rats, this might just be me as a reviewer and consumer, you kind of lose me. I have the impression that they're probably the best, least expensive, and most cost-efficient animal aside from monkeys to do testing on for research, but they're so small. And I don't know, I'm almost 27 years old. I've lived in Pennsylvania my whole life. I don't even think I've ever even seen a rat in person before. At least you can see monkeys at the zoo. I hear about rats, and it's like watching golf, you know? Like, chapter 3 is wired for confidence. This chapter explains more than any other how confidence is genetic. There were so many studies in this book, and some of these were really crazy. Like, there was a study where a doctor in Britain followed 15,000 sets of twins from birth into adulthood, gaining vast amounts of data from everything from intelligence to propensity for disease to gender roles. It's interesting how all these researchers took personality traits and reverse engineered them to discover the genetics behind them. But for people interested in a topic like confidence, I have to say authors don't need to go as in depth as these ones did. It's not that it was a horrible thing, but I don't know. This was it was almost like it was serving like cleaning up your mental mess level in depth, which is not a good thing. Two relevant genes control dopamine. One is known as COMT and the other is DRD4. Both of these genes come in different varieties. One version of the DRD4 gene, DRD47R, is the gene that encourages dramatic risk-taking. It's often called the adventure gene. They do give examples of after this of scandal-prone politicians, extreme athletes, and certain investors, but numbers and letters like that, like if you have too many, like, people don't remember that many things. Still, the way they explain how nurture can be so powerful that it can sometimes just reverse and just overtake nature, it was pretty cool. And they talk about that more throughout later in the book. Chapter 4, this chapter name makes me uncomfortable a little. Dumb, ugly, and other reasons women have less confidence. The beginning of this chapter is just unbelievable, hence the name. The chapter is named after what male students call female students at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. This is one of the most prestigious institutions in the country, and I don't get it. I just don't understand it. What is the point of this level of inequity? Women are competent. They are. Women in the U.S. reversed the education gap, and now they are earning more undergraduate, graduate, and PhDs than men. Companies that employ women in large numbers outperform competitors by every measure of profitability. And this whole thing, nonetheless, with women not asking for a raise or overshooting is emphasized still throughout the book. Not that it's not true, but it seems the authors really want us to understand it. You may laugh, but you know it rings true. That is the soundtrack of too many young women just starting out, but it's not how the guy sitting in the adjacent cubicle thought about it, which is why he's apt to be making $5,000 more than you. A Rutgers study found that the average pay gap between men and women, a lot of emphasis on this pay gap also throughout the book. Again, not that it's not there. In the first 5 years after college, and it increases over the years, the authors say, because women don't ask for more money. Is it a matter of not seeing one's worth as higher? I don't know. By the way, I do not mean to sound privileged or anything in this video. I'm just trying to observe. Obviously, if there's anything about the book that bothers me, you know I'll say it. Chapter 5 is the new nurture. The critique I have here is that overall, I find that there's a lack of empathy in all of these explanations of how and where women lack confidence before bringing them up and saying, look, you can still do this. It's still... I know that it can be difficult, but I don't know. It focused very heavily on their research, which is not bad, but that level of empathy, in my opinion, could benefit from, in the book, from being higher, just for the sake of a more balanced overall perspective. Chapter 6, Falling Fast and Other Confidence-Boosting Habits. This is where the rubber really hits the road. The beauty is that when you fail fast or early, you have a lot less to lose. Usually you're failing small rather than big, and you have a lot more to gain by learning as you fail. But the authors say this is the ultimate paradigm for building female confidence. This gets you to stop analyzing every nook and cranny of a plan's potential consequences. And another point in this chapter that stood out to me was when they talked about upspeak, which is a manner of communication when someone talks like this. So even though they're declaring something, their tonality gets higher toward the end of certain words or phrases to make it sound like a question. And to people who hear this question like tonality, this can tend to sound like it's being said by someone who's not really certain about what they're saying and lacks confidence. But the study they talked about indicated that the men didn't do this, not at all. In fact, if anything, they were the opposite and they were overconfident. I don't know, they make it sound like an uphill battle in the book, but the stories they tell of those they interviewed do make it sound a little more possible. They do stress a lot that these habits and thought loops are not hardwired into a woman's DNA to the point where it's irreversible and you can't do anything about it. Whatever it is, it can be adjusted. Chapter 7 is now Pass It On. If you're looking for practical advice, especially when it comes to raising a daughter and helping her to cultivate confidence, I'd suggest getting the book for just this chapter alone. This is not to say the rest of the book isn't worth it. It's very, very, very well researched, and they give you a ton of insight as to what's going on, where they find women are falling short in today's world, and more, as far as, the cultivation of confidence. But the straight up practical advice really starts here. And chapter 8, lastly, is The Science and the Art. Where they really struck gold toward the end of the book is where they talked about this sort of sweet spot where researchers followed over 100 business school graduates for 8 years, and they found that employees who combine more masculine traits like aggression, assertiveness, and confidence with more feminine traits like collaboration, process orientation, and humility, they will outperform everyone. Overall, though, I think that despite what I've said about the details being a little much at points and that the book could potentially benefit from the incorporation of some more empathy, between the unique subject matter, impressive organization, and impeccably thorough research, I can tell you that these authors are definitely onto something. And when it comes to confidence, they definitely practice what they preach. Because everyone has their own struggles. There are some men who are less confident than women. And there are women who are less confident than some men. And regardless of who might need this book more than others, there are other books like, The Confidence Gap, which that are very sex neutral. I would say it's nice to see a book like this, but it would also be nice to see a book like this for just men. Kind of like, the female brain versus the male brain. Although, respectfully, those are both by the same author and they're damn good books. I think this one points toward a more equal and hopeful future, though. Quotes: having talent isn't about being confident. Confidence is actually a part of that talent. You have to have it to be good at your job. Are we warriors or worriers? If life were one long grade school, women would be the undisputed rulers of the world. Direction 1. I recommend this book for anyone who wants to know, is there something holding women back in today's world? What could it be? Is there something, are things not fair? What's going on? Especially in a professional setting. I would like to disclose that as a male, I'm really saying all of this though based on what I've learned from the book, more than really anything I can think of off the top of my head. When I review this type of book, I don't want to seem unconsciously biased or like I'm on the wrong side of history. I just want you guys to know that I'm learning and listening, but that's who I recommend this book for. Direction 2, some recommendations that don't have to do with being a female in today's world, but definitely confidence. The Confidence Gap by Russ Harris, I think that's the guy's name, and Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang. Oh, that book was so freaking good. Rejection Proof. The Confidence Code by Claire Shipman and Katty K. There's a link in the description if you guys want to check it out and read the reviews. That and all the other books that I mentioned in this video if you want to check those out too. If there are any other books that you want me to check out and review, please let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you checked out this book and you liked it. But hey, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, because I don't get why people watch this far into my videos and they don't subscribe. But if you have subscribed and you want to turn it up just a notch and turn on that notification bell to get a notification whenever I drop new videos, that would mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can find me everywhere and I will see you then.